that people do not catch you off guard, and that you can come back to anything, really. That's what this is about. So that people aren't leaving you speechless. You know, everyone is someplace between stoppable and unstoppable. You know, there are those people who always seem to have the right words at the right time, and then there are those people who struggle a little bit more. So what we're going to do tonight is to ensure that people aren't taking you off guard and leaving you without words and being seen as the person who is not the savviest communicator of the bunch. We're going to take one huge step towards becoming an unstoppable, confident, savvy communicator. You ready? The tools that I'm going to give you tonight are a little bit of an extension of what we talked about this morning. And when we were doing this morning we were doing a drive-by, right?
Yes, we were.
Yes, we were. Tonight, what I'm going to focus on are the feel, felt, found, because people tended to like that. People liked that this morning, right?
Yes, they did.
We're going to talk about the feel, felt, found, navigational phrases, magic phrases, and I can't read my own writing. Navigational phrases, those are the three things. Navigational phrases, magic phrases, and the feel, felt, found. All right, these are all verbal patterns. And the spotlight question, that was it. These are all verbal patterns that you can practice for when you need them. Every savvy communicator who makes it look easy just makes it look easy by a lot of practice. And the way that I recommend practicing is I use flashcards, and I'm going to be including like an example set of the things that we're talking about here today, for example, in the description below. So make sure to click that. It will be next to the link for your 50% off of the VIP pass coupon. And I recommend you take advantage of that as well, because I don't know how long Jean's going to allow us to do that, because she's a little tight. So we're going to be covering the things that you'll find in the resources below. And what I'd like to do is I take my flashcards and I stick them out in front of me at work. So I'll make several copies of the same cards and I'll stick them in front of me at work so that while I'm talking on the phone, or if I'm about to see somebody and I know I'm going to have a recurring issue with them, I'll have it there in front of me so that I can have a visual cue as to what to say. You know, a lot of times, if you can hear that, that's Buddy. we don't have, could you open the door? We don't want Thumper, we don't have Thumper the rabbit here. But if you, hey Buddy, come on baby. If you have ever worked in a phone center, you'll know that there are phrases all over the place that people will have in front of them for when they need them. Kind of, you know, visual cues. The more visual cues you have, the better. And the more you can make them accessible, so that while you're waiting for an elevator, so that while you're waiting for a client or whatever, you can take out your flashcards and review them. The other thing that I recommend is that while you're in the shower, for example, I have a whole bunch of these little speakers, and I will show you one. There's one that I recommend. Andrew, did you ever see it? It was blue and black. They tend to grow legs around here, but I'm going to give you in the next episode, I'm going to try to include it in the link below. Could you jot that down? Yeah. There's a blue and black speaker that somebody sent me, a sponsor, and it was fantastic. It connected so easily. It was made for water and bathrooms and things like that, and it sounded awesome, and it was like $20 if you wanted to buy it. When you're in the shower, there's something about when you're in the shower, when the water's running over your head, whatever you're listening to soaks into your brain. So make sure if you have negaholics around the house, they are not talking to you while you're in the shower. And if you can instead put on something educational, motivational, remember that if you struggle with negative thoughts, the words that come out of our mouth are directly connected with the thoughts in our brain, right? I mean, what's in there comes out of there. If you want to speak more positive words, think more positive thoughts. You can't help but whatever's in there comes out. Not often do we make the connection that the same is also true in reverse. That if you want to change your thoughts, change your speech patterns. What you say changes what you think. You know, there's not just the connection from here out there. The connection also goes from here back in there. And there was a study done, I can't even remember, I'm always looking at these studies, but there was a study done not too long ago where they had people fake smiles and things like that. When you fake a smile, you actually become more happy. You know, maybe you're fooling yourself into being happier, but I don't really know what the difference is. So when you can start to deliberately change your speech patterns, that is a huge step in changing your thought patterns. And then it has a cyclical effect. It has a, it just keeps going on and on and on. That changes that, and then it changes it again, and it changes it again. And before you know it, you will be thinking and speaking positive, powerful words all the time. If you put something on, for example, not that I'm saying this is the only resource out there, but the 9 Principles is a great resource to help work through issues that you may have in relationships. If you have my audio program, the Step Out of the Shadows and Speak program, if you put that on, it's filled with verbal patterns. And I'll say things like, okay, repeat after me. You know, I appreciate why you would feel that way. I felt the same way in the past. However, what I have found is, that's the feel, felt, found we'll be talking about today. If you can repeat those, speak those words, keep speaking them, they tend to come out then more naturally when you need them. And if you can, while you're learning a language or you're learning to communicate, remember, it's not just about hearing something or seeing something. Speak it, hear it, read it, write it. Repeat that after me. Andrew, speak it, hear it, read it, write it. If you can do that, instead of just reading something in a book or listening to an audio, if you can incorporate those 4 things, speak it, hear it, read it, write it, then your communication growth skyrockets. And before you know it, you will be an unstoppable, savvy communicator in all situations, both at work and at home. Because it's really about learning the moves, right? Andrew learned some moves this morning. What were the moves you learned, Andrew?
Driving.
Drive your car. Show him, Andrew.
Jacket. No, okay.
Not jacket. Drive. You can remain seated. Because you can even, right? Drive your car. Adjust your shirt. Shoot those guns. Bang, bang. With those 3 moves, you can dance to anything now, right, Andrew?
Kind of.
He learned how to dance in 30 seconds today on the beach. There you go. Just like he learned how to respond to just about anything. What were the 4 magic phrases, Andrew?
No.
That's interesting.
That's interesting.
Why would you say that?
Why would you say that?
That's interesting.
Why would you do that?
Why would you do that? That's interesting. Why would you ask that? Or, that's interesting. Tell me more. With those 4 phrases, like pretty soon we're going to be talking to Oprah, right, Andrew?
Yes, we are.
Andrew promised me that we would have a meeting soon with Oprah, so I'm sure it's done. And when you look at the powerful, highly paid communicators of the day, who are considered to be the #1 communicators in the world, all they do is sit there with other people and say to them, interesting, tell me more about that. Oh, go on, tell me more about that. And that's all they do, is just encourage other people to tell them more. So, here are the tactics that I'm going to give you today, so that when you find yourself in a situation that you would otherwise be at a loss for words, that will not happen, because you're going to have these, what are called duct tape tactics. Duct tape tactics are called duct tape because, what do we use duct tape for, Andrew?
To paste things.
To fix what?
Broken things.
Anything, right? Just about anything that's broken, a quick fix is duct tape. Duct tape tactics are tactics that you can use in a variety of different circumstances to find the words. Even if you just need to buy some time. You know, in this political season in which we find ourselves, you will find politicians who just learned these types of tactics on the debate stage using them. And for example, Andrew, did you do your homework today? Do you remember what your homework was? Yes. He's had a busy day. He's been busy, I know. But do you remember it was the feel, felt, found?
Yes.
Did you do it?
Yes.
Yeah, sure. Okay, we're going to start out with the feel, felt, found. The feel, felt, found is a 3-part verbal pattern. 3-part verbal patterns are my favorite because the brain naturally gravitates towards chunks of 3 things. You know, when we want to memorize something, instead of a phone number, instead of memorizing all 10 numbers, what do? We break it down into 3 chunks. That's easier to remember. If we have a license plate with 6 or 7 letters and numbers on it, they're not all strung together. They're broken up into 2 chunks of 3. Because if I were to say to you, for example, Andrew, I've got some instructions for you, 10 things. Okay, number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Whatever I were to stick in those, numbers, our brain tends to, at number 2, say, oh, come on, are we done yet? If I were to instead say, Andrew, I've got 10 things that I'm going to put on your list here today. First of all, do 1, 2, and 3. Secondly, when you're done with that, move along to numbers 4, 5, 6, and 7. And finally, finish up the day with 8, 9, and 10. he's going to be more likely to remember that because I broke it up into 3 chunks. These 3-part verbal patterns do the same thing with your brain. They help you remember them. They help the person who's receiving the message process it, because there's always something about the letter 3 that we love. You know, the first one's too hot, second one's too cold, third one's just right. First one's too hot, first one's too soft, second one's too hard, third one's just right. You know, when you can put something in a pretty little package of 3, there's something about that that helps you and the other person process that information. So let's start off with the basic feel, felt, found. And again, find your materials that go along with this in the lesson, in the description below. Number 1, feel. Andrew, what's something that people object to? Like, what's something that you might be presenting to a customer where the customer could be, by the way, a coworker. You might be in a meeting presenting an idea to the boss. You might be with a customer presenting a product to the customer. What's something that you might present to somebody that they would have an objection to?
Maybe if it has a lot of paperwork to do.
Great. So Andrew's coming up with a new system for the accounting department.
Yeah.
And somebody says to him, now wait, Andrew. That really sounds like it's going to be a lot of work. Number 1, if I want to actually persuade the person that has the objection. Andrew, do you ever sell Mary Kay Cosmetics? You ever sell this? Yes, you do, you?
Well, my mom used to sell that.
Did she? I know. I have psychic powers. And she knows all about the feel, felt, found. Because I know of his mother. We have not yet officially met. But I know that she's very efficient and works very hard and takes anything very seriously. So I'm going to be pretty sure that she knows the feel, felt, found because it was invented by Mary Kay Ash. And I love to read the stories of successful entrepreneurs who came from, nothing and made this huge, enterprise, which Mary Kay started the whole door-to-door cosmetic sales industry. She revolutionized it anyway. And the salespeople, when they first went out, had a lot of trouble selling because they didn't know any better. And they would knock on the door and say, hey, Andrew, I've got some lipstick here that I think you would love. Do you want to try it out? What do people generally say when presented with something that's new?
No.
No. And so the people would say, okay, thank you, goodbye. And they go to the next one. Or they started to get, grow some cojones, and they would say things like, but just a minute, Andrew, wait, just give it a chance. I think if you can give this a chance, you'll find that blah, 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 blah. And again, the people would be like, no, you shut up we are eating dinner. Mm-hmm. So what Mary Kay taught her people to do was, instead of just saying, but, and launching into why you believe you can overcome their objection, or instead of simply saying no, go along with basic human psychology and buy yourself a little bit of time using these 3 principles. Number 1, validate. Validate the way that people feel. Tell them, I can understand why you'd be concerned. I understand why that would be a worry of yours. I can sure understand, or I can appreciate, I can see why you would feel that way. That's going to be step number 1. And remember the danger phrase. Do not say to people, I know how you feel. Because why wouldn't we say that, Andrew?
Because we don't know how.
Because we don't know how they feel, and that's what they would think or say. So number 1, validate people. Number 2, generalize. What you do when you generalize is you tell somebody, you know what, you are not alone in that arc. There was a whole menagerie on that ark with you before, and they were lost at sea, but I found them just like I'm finding you, and I'm going to bring you to the light just like I did them. When you can tell people that, you're not alone. I mean, you're totally wrong, but you're not alone. A lot of people are wrong like you are until they're right like I am. So when you say that, after you've already validated somebody, then when you generalize them in the way that they're feeling right now and their level of incorrectness, you can then respond to them. And when you do that, instead of just responding, it's much, much, much more effective. People are more likely to change to your way of thinking, and the people who are listening to that will be impressed, and it buys you time. But we cannot remember all of that. That's too much to remember, right, Andrew?
Yes, it is.
It is! So what do?
We break it down.
We break it down into 3. Feel, felt, found. I can appreciate why you'd feel that way, Andrew. Some other people have felt the same way in the past. However, what I have found is it works for them, and I believe that if you could just give me a chance, it'll work for you too. Or the seesaw scene. Andrew, I can understand why you see it that way. You know, I myself saw it the same way when I first used this product, but I have seen what it has done for me and my budget, and I believe that if you can give it a chance, you'll see that it'll do the same thing for you. Or the think, thought, believe. Oh, Andrew, I can understand here today, have thought the same way in the past, but I believe that if you could just give this a chance, it'll work for you just like it's worked for them. You know, I can use those speech patterns for anything. Just like a politician you'll see do just that. You know, somebody will say, hey, you know what? I think that you haven't really given clean coal a chance. I think that's really the wave of the future. And they don't know what to say because they don't read books. And so they'll say things like, well, you know, I can sure understand why you might think that, you know, coal is dirty because you watch that fake newsy stuff. But a lot of the people who are watching this at home tonight, I'm sure they've thought the same thing, you know. However, I believe that if you can just read the real reports from the real journalists at Mad Magazine, you will find that coal is the cleanest and the meanest of all of the different fossil fuels, and it will work for our country just as it's worked for other undeveloped countries. Wouldn't you? And then, you know, the audience will go crazy and say, oh yes, you know, make us great again. So I'm totally joking. Dad, that's for you. But you will see them use those three-step processes, processes, would that be process, all the time, buying themselves some time to think, trying to be persuasive, and it works. Now, imagine if you could use those same tools and actually have some substance behind it. I mean, I always encourage people to actually have a message, you know, have substance. And if you can couple the two things, you know, tactics, psychological tactics, verbal tactics that have been proven time and time again to be effective, and then use your own wisdom and skill and compassion to do good with it. Imagine what you could do. So, feel, felt, found. Have that on your, have that in front of you at your desk. You know, have your flashcards, which you will find below next to the 50% off VIP coupon, everything for life, free after that. If you have that, if you have that in front of you, practice using it on the phone. I remember when I used this with my mother, I was practicing it, I just learned it, and I was in her kitchen in Fargo, North Dakota, and she said something, you know, she poo-pooed one of my ideas. I can't remember which one, because, you know, it happens all the time. So I said, Mom, you know, I can understand why you would feel that way, and, you know, maybe Dad and Marty felt the same way in the past, but I believe that if you just give it a chance. She was like, oh, don't use that feel, felt, found with me, mister. I was a real estate agent. I know what that is. And I'm like, oh, she knows, you know, but it's just like any other language. When people speak it correctly, if you also speak it, you're not dissuaded by that. You think, oh, look at you. I trust you more now. Go on, give me another feel, felt, found. It feels great. You know, you think good things about people who you recognize have invested in their skills the way that you have. And if you know things like this, it's because you've taken the time to invest in your skills. So don't be afraid that somebody might be on to you if you start using powerful communication tactics, just as I'm sure you wouldn't be afraid of somebody being on to you if you were speaking correct English. So having said that, Andrew, do you remember what, this is now secret number 2. Because those types of tactics, I've got tons of them, tons. On our 50-hour Step Out of the Shadows and Speak program, that's 50. Are you having a good time back there? That's Buddy, by the way. Hey, Bud. Hi, Bud. Yeah, you'll find him on many of the lessons, too. In that 50-hour course, you will find a cornucopia of tactics just like that that will help you always come back with an answer so that you're not sitting there at a loss for words, and you can practice goat hiding, okay? Let's go along to navigational. That dog is going to have a heart attack. Let's go along to navigational phrases. Navigational phrases. Andrew, what is a navigational phrase? First of all, remember, when you know the name of something, it empowers you and it empowers the thing to be whatever it is supposed to be when you know its name. Just like you can, when you know someone's name or something's name, cast it out. You know, we are powerless against things when we do not know its name. When you can say, wait a minute, I know you, Rumpelstiltskin, 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 Rumpelstiltskin. There's always places, you know, in these stories that have lasted throughout the decades, throughout the centuries, where we recognize there's something about that rings true. What rings true in that particular part of, I think it was the girl with the golden ball.
The golden ball?
Yeah, that's what she, I think Rumpelstiltskin actually comes from the girl with the golden ball. She was playing with the golden ball in the garden, and...
Wasn't she knitting?
Knitting?
Well, she had to weave gold.
That was Sleeping Beauty.
No.
Who weaved gold?
Slept.
She was weaving gold into straw into gold.
No, the king brought in a pile of hay.
Yeah.
And they said, okay, you're gonna make this hay gold.
Yeah.
And she started crying, and came Rumpelstiltskin. And said, okay, I'll make that. But you have to give me your ring.
Are you hearing this dribble? That's not what What? Are you making this up?
No. And then the king gave her more hay. And she had to make more gold. And then at last, she said, okay, if you do this, you marry me. And Rumpelstiltskin said, okay, I'll do it, but you have to give me your first child.
Andrew.
What?
Look up the girl with the golden ball.
The golden ball? Why would you have?
That's just what it was. I don't know. Then Sleeping Beauty was spinning straw into gold.
No, she was just spinning, and then she got...
She was not spinning straw into gold. Anyway, it's not about the details, Andrew. It's about the truth that we find in the details. That's what it's always about in life, you know what I mean? Most of it's just an illusion. The truth we recognize. And we recognize, I don't know, why were we talking about that, Andrew?
Because
Because we know his name. Once you know somebody's name, if you can call, once I know who you are, like when you're dealing with difficult people. If I think, oh, that's just Andrew. Oh, he's so difficult. Oh my God. If I think his name is Andrew, I can't have any power over Andrew because there aren't books written, well, there probably are, but there aren't, guidebooks written on how to deal with difficult Andrew, right? Are there? Probably, if you had to get some ex-girlfriends. Yeah.
Next summer.
But coming next summer. But there are books written about. Andrew, when you're a difficult person, what's your style? What do you do?
I'm very stubborn.
Stubborn. Do you quiet up? Are you a quiet person, or do you yell and explode, or what do you do?
Depending. With my family, I yell and explode. With people, I just quiet and give them the reason.
That would make sense being a psychopath. So when you know, let's say that Andrew, for example, is the type of person who takes pot shots at me in public, masked in humor, he insults me when other people are around. When we're together, he pretends like he's normal. But when other people get around, he's like, oh, now I have an audience, and he starts to, throw out cute things. If I can recognize that's Andrew's sitting right here, but sometimes the sniper comes in and takes his place, and that's the difficult person that Andrew exhibits when he's difficult. If I can name him, and say, oh, I know your name. Ha! You have no power here. Poof, be gone, Andrew.
Like a demon?
Poof, poof, poof. Like a demon. Poof, be gone. I don't know how that works. Because I know your name. Then I have the power. Remember, anytime you know somebody's name, something's name, what its function is, its definition, then you have the power. And you can then use it for what it's supposed to be used, or cast it out more easily. So, having said that,
yes,
we want to know the names of everything. And navigational phrases are called navigational phrases, Andrew. Why? How would you define them? Like, what is the type of situation in which you might find yourself needing a navigational phrase?
When you need to direct the conversation to a certain way.
Yes, that's right. When you need to, good job, Andrew, good job. When you need to direct the conversation in a different, or when you need to direct a conversation, right? Now, having said that, sometimes we need to direct conversations, we need to redirect conversations, we need to steer them in the right direction. We also need to do that in our relationships. But we find ourselves, let's say that we're in a meeting, you know what I mean? And somebody takes us off guard because all of a sudden we're talking about drinking at the bar, or sexual relationships, or politics, or whatever. And we're thinking, oh, wait a minute, This was not on the agenda. I don't know what to do now. Remember, you want to get yourself out of a pickle? Are you stuck? Navigational phrases. The definition is phrases that are similar to or used in navigation. For example, people are used to driving down the street and listening to the GPS system in their car tell them, turn right, make a U-turn, things like that.
Yes.
When we hear phrases that we're used to hearing and obeying because they're coming from a credible source, no matter who says them, we are more likely to obey them and believe that the source is credible. Therefore, if I can use navigational phrases that people are very accustomed to hearing and following, instead of saying something like, if Andrew starts to, as usual, talk his inappropriate talk at work, if I'm like, wait a minute, Andrew, I really don't think that talking about your drunken sexual conquests is appropriate here at work. That type of language, people are like, what does that even mean? Not appropriate here. Why did anybody ask you, right? That's a bunch of gibberish, nonsense. Instead, if you can say, Andrew, I believe that our conversation has gone off course and I'd like to get it back on track. People will say, oh, you're right. And it's a very nice way to help people get back on track because we're all in the same, we're all going to the same place. Some of us have fallen out of the boat or our boats have leaks in them and we need to help one another out. So with good intention, I'm going to tell him, Andrew, I think maybe we have taken an unfortunate turn here, and I'd like it if we could stop here for a moment and, turn around. If we could back up, if we could, whatever it is, people respond to that, and you can use them like that because, again, these aren't new phrases for us. These are very simple phrases, but remember, when you find yourself having gone off course in a conversation or in a relationship, use navigational phrases to get it back on track. People will respond to them, and the people who are watching will be impressed with that. Magic phrases are going to be things like the ones we talked about before, that when somebody says something that leaves you, I can't believe you just said that. Remember, that's interesting. Why would you say that? Now, you could, depending on the situation, throw in your tone, and say something like, Andrew, that is interesting. Why would you ask me something like that in front of these people? You know what I mean? Letting people know, hey, that is totally crossing boundaries, or telling people, Andrew, that's interesting. Why would you ask me something like that? Why would an employee ask his boss a question like that? You could call people on situations by injecting labels, Why would an employee ask a boss a question like that? Why would somebody who supposedly loves me do something like that? Now, that would not be for you, Andrew. And the last one, spotlight questions. Jennifer Hudson, this is for you. What's a spotlight question? Do you remember, Andrew?
The questions that expose you.
Yes, the question that exposes people. So if I want to expose you, Andrew, not that we need any more of that. Let's say that Andrew asks me a passive-aggressive question that takes me off guard, or says something passive-aggressive. When people are passive-aggressive, that can very much take us off guard because if you're not a passive-aggressive sniper or something like that, we don't know how to respond to that. Like my mother, she would be really good at responding to passive-aggressive comments. But most of us do not spend our whole life practicing being a sniper or a passive-aggressive bully or things like that. Not that you do, Mom, you do not, you do not, you do not. But let's just say that I do. And I say to Andrew, something like, hey, Andrew, this just happened to somebody. Somebody wrote in, so whoever wrote in and asked this question, I try to get to them all, but I sometimes fall behind. So somebody wrote me and said that their boss a manager was walking by her desk and knew of the morning where she had accidentally, I'm going to say, ripped a report up, ruined a report. It was something to do with a report that she botched. So as the manager passed by her desk, he said to her something such as, hey, ruin any more projects this afternoon? And he said it obviously to embarrass her in front of her colleagues. And she said, I was so stunned by it, I just let him walk by and I didn't have a response for that. And I don't want to do that again, was the gist of it. Now, sometimes I have to say, choosing to not respond is a response. Not responding because you do not have the words is not a response, and it is not acceptable. You know what I mean? It means, okay, you got that one. I'm going to be prepared the next time. And a spotlight question would have been perfect for that type of situation. You know, to say, like, if Andrew were to once again walk by my desk, you know, and say something insulting to me in front of everybody else, in front of Buddy and Maggie, you know, I could say to him something like, Andrew, how would, Andrew, if I were to walk by your desk now and say, hey, Andrew, run any reports tonight? How might you respond to me using a spotlight question, which begins with, are you trying to? Or you could do a two-part. This is a duet. Are you ready?
Yes.
When you say this, do you mean that? So, you know, when you say you think I'm capable of handling it, do you mean you don't think I'm capable of handling it? Because that's what it sounds like. You know, when you just call people out on their behavior, it's so disarming to them. So what might you say to me, Andrew, if I said, hey, Andrew, run any projects this evening?
Are you trying to say that my accident was on purpose?
Oh, perfect. Oh. See, when you say things like that, are you trying to say that my accident was on purpose? There is nothing that can, and I'm going to close on this, there is nothing that can compete and win. There are things that can compete and tie. There's nothing that can compete and win over direct, honest, positive communication. You know, Andrew, when you say that, are you trying to hurt my feelings? Because that's what you're doing. You know, when you, when you say you're not going to, instead of saying a hostile question like, why don't you ever do what you say you're going to do? Not you, Andrew. If I were to instead use a hamburger, when you, I feel because. Repeat that, Andrew. When you, I feel because.
When you, I feel because.
One more time. When you, I feel because.
When you, I feel because.
One more time. When you, I feel because. This is a good one for your mother. She'll love it. She'll love it.
When you, I feel because.
Yes. Instead of saying things like, you know, you never do what you say you're going to do. The hostile questions, hamburgers, which is what this is, when you, I feel because, the meat of it is I feel, I tend to use when I'm about to ask a hostile question. Hostile questions are things like, how did you think I would feel? You know, or what were you thinking when, you know, things like that. Instead, just say what you mean to say. Say what you're feeling. When you say you're going to do something and then you don't do it, I feel hurt and confused because I love you and I try to do what I tell you I'm going to do. Or, you know, like instead of, you know, if Andrew were going to call me a name again in front of people, you know, like in front of a party and call me, hey, there's Dan. What do you call me?
Hey, Pee-wee Herman.
Hey, Thanks, Andrew. Pee-wee Herman. So if I were to say, yeah, I'm not even going to try to say something nasty. If I were to just say, Andrew, when you call me names like that, I feel hurt and embarrassed because it reminds me of when I was name called on the playground as a child. People are going to be like, oh God, I feel so terrible. You'll be like, ha, that's it. That's the expression. You know, I want, if I'm being sane, I want you to understand how I feel when these things happen. We instead, however, instead of using the 9 principles, again, you'll find that in the Daniel Kahneman training, instead of remembering you can't cast out darkness with more darkness, you cannot do that. We lose our minds in this moment between event and response. We go crazy. We forget who we are. We forget why we're here and what we want. And we start to believe that the dark is a reality when it's not. There's no such thing as darkness. There's just the absence of light or the absence of love. So we start to believe that and buy into it and become like that. Instead, if we were to always communicate positively, in a compassionate way, direct, honest, like Andrew, what is something that people say to one another that is hurtful, that is just hurtful and insulting, and you wish that people didn't talk like that? What? She's going to say something about his mom.
I was.
I know he was. I know. What were you going to say?
When they insult to your mom.
People insult your mother?
In Mexico, yeah.
Oh, because that's the worst thing you can do, right? Yeah. Okay, so Andrew said it when they insult your mother. Okay, No, I don't know if this is a good match. However, let's say that, now, you know, I'm going to say that I'm channeling your future wife, okay?
What do you mean?
Okay. I'm experiencing, I'm hearing what she's saying. It's resonating in my brain.
Okay.
And she's going to say something to you like, you know, Andrew, you can tell that woman, could you please tell that woman not to come around here so much? God, hearing her voice is like nails on a chalkboard. Now, I'm saying that because I've never even met Andrew's mother. I do not think that, by the way, if Andrew's mother watches this, you are one of my heroes. So, you know, she is. So if I were to say that, you know, could you tell your mother not to come around here so much? God, just hearing her voice. What could you say? Instead of saying, really? What? And having your own little thing to say, what might you say using a when you I feel because?
When you say that, I feel bad. Because she is the love of my life.
Andrew's such a mama's boy. It's so sweet. He said, what did you say? When you say that, I feel bad because she's the love of my life. Now, let's just say that you were that nagging spouse. And nag comes in many different forms. And you were saying something nasty like that to your spouse, and they came back to you and said, when you say that, I feel bad because she's the love of my life. It makes you realize how far from love you have strayed and how ridiculous some of the things we say are. But sometimes we need to get them out of our mouths to realize how ridiculous they are. So forgiveness is the only option in many situations. You know, forgiveness is such a powerful thing, and we'll talk about that. You know, when people say things because they're out of their mind and crazy, let them know. But when you can communicate back to them, remember, we teach by demonstration. If you want to teach people a lesson, be the lesson that you want to teach them and bring them back into the boat with you. Remember, we're all going there. So instead of, you know, trying to cast out darkness with more darkness, learn how to communicate like that. And like, how could you possibly come back to something like that? Ugh, I've got to do something. I'll find some way to punish him. Okay, Andrew, so for everybody, oh wait, by the way, I apologize. Remember, click the link below for your 50% off coupon. Come on, just do it. You know you want to. Andrew, did we get any questions or shout outs or things that I have to address? I apologize.
Well...
Were you not adding to the bucket of questions?
We only got one question.
Oh, what was the question?
What about when a coworker mocks my accent and laughs until she gets tears on her eyes?
That's a good question. When a coworker, according to this viewer, mocks your accent and laughs so hard that she gets tears in her eyes. What I would say to that person is, in private, you know, because I really believe, I believe that person, if they're laughing at your accent, they do not know how insulting that is. They think that you are okay with that. I'm gonna guess that they believe you to be confident. They believe you to be probably more attractive than they are. You know what I mean? Like they're looking at people gravitate towards you and you attract other people, I'm gonna guess, and attract attention. And I'm gonna guess that they believe, not that they're hurting you, but that you can take it. You know, they're trying to get some of the attention that you're stealing, and they're going to believe that you're fine with it because, I mean, somebody pretty like you, handsome like you, smart, because everybody likes you, so I'm gonna try to get some of that love for me. I have to remember that, you know, like if they knew how to get all of their needs met and show you great love and receive great love at the same time, all of that, I'm guessing they would do that. They do not know how. So I would talk with them in private, and I would use a script. Speaking of these verbal patterns, DESC or AEIOU. Like A, here are the actions. I, here are the, E, here are the effects of what you're doing. I, here's what I would like from you. O, or else this might happen. You, here's what you would get out of it. An AEIOU script for a situation like that. I'm gonna make this up off the top of my head. And scripts help you actually sound cohesive and sober when you deliver messages like this. I might say something like, let's say that his name was, or her name was
Andrew.
Andrew, okay. And I were to talk to him about this. I might say something such as, Andrew, I'm frustrated and I need your help. That's my lead-in line, okay? A. Today when you laughed because of my accent. That's the actions. Now I'm moving along to I. Excuse me, E, I have to give the effects. Today when you laughed at my accent in the meeting, I felt embarrassed and distracted, by the way, from the task at hand that we were there to do. But more than anything, I was hurt and embarrassed. In the future, this is what I want. In the future, if you find something that I say funny because of my accent, please don't laugh at me in public and make a mockery or a clown out of me. Oh, because behavior like that has effects and a ripple effect that goes out so much further than just you and me, but it goes to everyone in this organization, all the way to the boss. And I don't want to have a conversation like this again. This is, by the way, what you will get. The benefit is we won't have to talk about this again if you can do what I'm asking you to do. Okay? So, and I don't want to have these conversations again with you. So in the future, please respect my challenges when it comes to my language. I speak two of them, and try to remember that what you're doing, I know you don't know, is hurtful or rude, but it does hurt me. Can I count on you to do that, please? That's the closing line. Can I count on you? Now, I could get that whole message out in 30 seconds, 60 seconds, 60 seconds, or less. And then when you ask somebody then, can I count on you for that? Now, those might not be your words, but the A, E, I, O, U. Andrew, today during the meeting you made fun of me in front of our coworkers. E, when you do that, not only does it distract from what we came there to do, it embarrassed me. I, in the future, if you could refrain from mocking me in public, then we would be able to avoid the ripple effect that this has, and you and I would never have to have this conversation again, and it can end right here. Does that work for you? Now, remember, if you're talking to somebody who does not like confrontation, who does not like direct communication, which is exactly what this is, saying to them, if you can do that, this will end here, and we will never have to have this conversation again. I've already thrown in the conversation. This goes all the way to management and the boss and our diversity department, things like this. We don't want that. I'm letting you know, this is going to go to the diversity department if you keep it up, and that diversity department might just be me. So I want to tell them once, and then it's done. And you will be surprised if you tell somebody like that, what I just said. You tell them in a very clear, succinct way. Here's what you did, here's why that was wrong, here's what I would like, here's what you'll get out of that, and would you agree to that? If you can do that and let them know, we don't want to talk about this anymore, you'd be amazed at how people will be stunned with clear, direct communication, and they will respond to it and respect that, So I would try that. And remember, at the beginning, by the way, you could say to them, before you give your lead-in line, something like, I wanted to bring this to you so that you and I would be handling this and no one else would have to get involved. Now, I would say something like that if this is, because in this case, this is a diversity issue, by the way. And remember, if the person is not, like I mentioned before, if they are not thinking that you're okay and they're not trying to, if instead of being that good person that I believe them to be, if they are purposely using the race card against you, like if you are, let's say that you're Mexican, and they are making fun of your accent in front of other people, or making fun of the way you look or dress, because of your race in front of other people to disempower you and to somehow try to infuse that organization with more racism, then be sure to be very clear and direct in your words when you say things like, I wanted this to remain between the two of us so that this didn't have to go any farther, okay? And then you can say that and practice saying your script in private so that when you deliver it, you can deliver it in a cool, calm manner, and watch your tone. I'm trying to use the tone that I would use. Many of us, when we speak, we tend to end things that we say with a question. You know what I mean? Like they'll say things like, I want this to stay between the two of us. And it makes everything that they say sound like they're not really confident about saying it. So practice your tone and look how people talk who believe what they're saying. Dum ba dum ba dum ba dum ba dum ba dum dum ba dum ba dum. And so practice saying things like, Andrew, I wanted to keep this between the two of us. In yesterday's meeting, when you did this, I felt this way. And I want you to know that if you can do this, da-da-da-da-da, end on a downturn, not an upturn. See what I mean? Okay, anything else?
No, I think we're about to wrap it up.
Thank you guys! Remember, please subscribe to this channel if you have not done so, and we will tell you when we're going to be live. And also, become a member. Membership has its privileges. And if you are a VIP member at Dan O'Connor Training, remember you get all of our webinars, courses, products for free forever. And you just pay once and it's on sale half off now for like $350. Get away. That's what Andrew spends on hair care in 1 week. You know, so there you go. And Buddy, hi Buddy. Buddy's and Maggie are here saying goodbye and good night. So for everybody here at Dan O'Connor Training, subscribe, like, and share this video. Please leave your comments below so that I can answer them. And send these to the people who you believe need them the most so that together we can pull ourselves out of this, toilet spiral that we find ourselves in terms of the global conversation. And we can remedy and heal that one conversation at a time. Thanks, guys.